Hey, welcome everybody to another Photoshop for Artists episode with me, Kyle Webster. I'm glad that you are here. Today we're going to talk about drawing in precision with Photoshop. So there are times where you want to be able to draw straight lines, make things that are close to one another, equidistant, and you want to be able to work with guides and with grids and all these kinds of fancy things. We're going to look at that today, and that is our mission in Photoshop for this episode. So say hi to me from wherever you are watching out there in the world. Remember, this is a live broadcast, so if you have questions, you can ask them directly in the chat at be.net/Adobe Live. If you're watching over on YouTube, go ahead and head over to Behance, that's be.net/Adobe Live, and over there you can ask your questions and I can answer them for you. If you're watching on YouTube, of course, I appreciate you watching there, and you can stay there as long as you like. I'm just not monitoring the chat so much over there, so I want to mention that. You can always watch these on replay. Just do a little search for Adobe Live, Photoshop for Artists to see the full lineup there. This, I believe, is episode 9 from this series. It's a short series we're doing just to really focus on a few basics for those of you who want to do drawing and painting in Photoshop. And we've covered a lot of good stuff, so go back through the older episodes to look at information about brushes, setting up your document, mixing colors, and all kinds of cool stuff. All right, let's head over to Photoshop here. And you'll see that I have a blank document ready to go. And we're going to say hi to Rick Adams from Toronto. Awesome. Peter, nice to see you. Beth from Northeast Pennsylvania. Very cool. Peter is in Chicago, by the way. And we also have some folks from, let's see, Cryo, who we know is in Ireland, I believe. And RB and Cody and Andreas. Nice to see you as well. What's up? Penny is here. Hey, Penny, nice to see you. Did I miss anybody? I see Steve and Steven. More folks joining in. Thanks for being here. Uma as well. What's up, Uma? All right, so let's get cracking. Now, there are several things you want to be able to do when you're drawing in precision in Photoshop, and the easiest thing to get started with is to learn about guides and grids, okay? So what are guides exactly? Well, first you have to have your rulers visible in order to take advantage of guides. And you know that I'm a big fan of keyboard shortcuts on this show and every live show that I do. So, first things first, if you want to be able to see your rulers, you go to View, and you're going to see Rulers right here. But look at that, next to it, as with so many things in Photoshop, we have a lovely keyboard shortcut. And if you're on a Mac, that is Command-R. And if you're on a PC, you remember that every time I say Command, you're using a Windows machine, you think Control, okay? Command, Control, okay. So, Command-R. Now, when I hit Command-R, you'll notice that we get some rulers showing up right here at the top and on the left. Now, once these have shown up, I can hold down the Control key on a Mac. Now, if you're on a PC, I believe you're going to hold down, is it Alt? Or, I'm thinking now. It might also be Control, actually. And look at this. If I touch the rulers while holding down that key, I'm going to have these options, okay? These are giving me units of measurement. And no matter what you set your document up as, okay? If you set your document up as a certain size in inches, centimeters, millimeters, pixels, whatever, you can still at any moment, using your rulers, switch out to a different unit of measurement, okay? Which is very convenient, very flexible. For now, we'll stick with pixels, all right? But what I want to show you is that you're going to be able to look at your ruler and see that in the very top left corner, you're presented with a 0. So we're starting from the top left, and as we move over, we're counting pixels until we get to the 2000 mark, all right? And if I were to tap and hold and then drag down into my document, right, I can place onto the document what's called a guide. And you'll see that as I'm dragging, Photoshop is indicating, okay, where I am in the document on the y-axis. So at the very top, I'm at 0. And now it's counting in pixels, right? A beautiful thing is that because this is an 1800 pixel high document, okay, the height of this document is 1800 pixels. Notice that this guide will snap at 900 pixels. When I say snap, it's going to automatically kind of lock into that position for a moment. That allows me to instantly find the vertical and horizontal centers of the document, which is great. So if I just snap it right there and let go, you'll now see I have this blue line, okay? Now, just to show you what happens when I use guides, I'm going to hit M to select my marquee tool. It's currently set to a rectangular marquee. And I'm going to start drawing a rectangular marquee right here. And look what happens right there. Notice that the line changes from a blue to a sort of pink. I'll do that again. Kablam. This is allowing me to snap to that guide with my selection. Okay? And from the bottom, same thing. So this gives me precision. Now what happens if I drag another guide down, leave it here, and then come over to the rulers on the left and drag this way and this way? Well, if I start in this corner with my marquee tool and start dragging, look, everything snaps in place, okay? I can move slightly to the left and that'll break away from that snapping. I can move slightly to the right and it'll break away, but it gives me a nice sort of 10 pixel space in there where it automatically snaps. So I can use guides to make a perfect selection of a very specific size. All right. And you can of course do this anywhere that the guides are intersecting, right? So that's going to give me that little selection right there. Now watch what happens as I move it up. Okay, everything here is freeform, freeform, freeform. Come to the left, boom, snaps. Come up this way and snaps into that corner perfectly. And if I zoom in, you will see that I'm right on that mark. Now, you may be surprised and think, but Kyle, it looks like you're 1 pixel off. No, 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 no. These are pixels, gang. Here's 588 pixels. Here's 589. One of the crazy things about Photoshop is you can zoom in past the individual pixel layer, and you'll notice that I'm way, way deep now into this document. So what appears to be an overlapping selection with the guides is actually right on the money. So don't let that throw you off. Option delete, fill that color. All right, now I have this little shape on a separate layer and I can freely move it around wherever I like, okay? You'll notice though, as I'm moving this way, okay, it is moving in little increments, okay? Now that I'm in more of a precision mode, and look where it snaps right here. This is at the 1000 pixel mark. And why is that? Well, because again, this document is 2000 pixels wide. And so as I'm moving to the right, look at that, it snaps right there, okay? And then as I move to the left and come back, it'll snap again. So I can line it up on that center point. I can line it up with these guides here, bottom corner, right in the center, top left corner, okay? And every time you snap, you're going to know that there's some snapping occurring because your guides will change color, okay? From that blue to that pink color, okay? That's how you know what's going on. Alrighty. Now, remember, if I hold down the Option key, right, while I have my Move tool, I'm going to go into a mode where I am duplicating a shape. Notice that as I drag, okay, even though I don't have a guide set up for this purpose, Photoshop will automatically allow that new layer, that new shape layer, to snap to align with the previous shape on the layer underneath it. So snapping, okay, will happen, look at that, corner to corner, perfect, corner to corner. Snapping will happen automatically, okay, as a setting. If you don't like this, it's not your bag, there are some settings that you can change, okay? So come over here under View, and right here where it says Snap, okay, you can simply turn it off altogether. Or right here you have really specific controls for where you want things to snap. Do you want it to snap to guides, to layers, to the bounds of the document, or to none. So you can get really picky with all that, okay? Now, I've turned off snap. Look at the difference. No snappage, okay? Other than to the document itself, all right? It's gonna show me where there are little moments where I could snap. Okay, see these lines that just appear briefly as I drag? Little pink lines, but no snapping's occurring. Now if we come back to view and we turn snap back on, ta-da, snappage, okay? So that's the first thing, guides. Guides allow you to create, all right, boundaries within your document where you want things to line up, and you can automatically have snapping turned on for layers so that different layers can be instantly aligned with other layers, okay? Now, speaking of alignment, you can actually, in Photoshop, select multiple layers and have them instantly align with one another along the right edge, the top, the bottom, the center, whatever you choose, by using your alignment tools, okay? So what I'm gonna do is this. I'm going to first hide the guides so they're not distracting you here. And the way I do that is I hit Command and then semicolon. And remember on a PC that's Control. But I hit Command semicolon. And this shows or hides my guides. Now when your guides are hidden, you cannot snap to them, okay? When they're hidden, they're not gonna do anything. Command semicolon, all right? All right, now let's take this same layer here, all right? We'll go ahead and lock its layer transparency. I'm going to do that by hitting the / key under the question mark on my keyboard. Hit /. I'm now locking this layer's transparency, which means I can only edit the pixels that are currently on the screen for that layer. I'll change the color to yellow, okay? And now, Command J. Anybody out there remember what that does? It duplicates the layer content. So now I have another layer with that same information. And I'm going to lock its layer transparency, change its color to blue, okay? Now I'll put this over here. So we have 3 different layers, a blue, a yellow, and a red. Now we're going to play with some alignment options. Now the great thing about the Move tool, okay, if you have the Move tool selected, is that your alignment options are going to show up automatically right here. Okay, there they are. And all I have to do is select these 3 layers together. So I'm going to hold down Shift. I tap on this layer, hold down Shift, and tap on the last one I want. Holding down Shift means you're going to grab everything in between the starting point and the ending point where you click, okay? So if I were to tap on this bottom layer, for example, all by itself, which is the red, and then hold down Shift and select the yellow, it's going to select those 2. But if I were to select the first, the red, and tap up here on the blue layer, all 3 will be selected. So I'm selecting multiple layers at once. Once I've selected more than 1 layer, you only need 2 for this to be activated, you'll see now that my alignment tools have been illuminated, which means I can start working with them. So here you'll see the option, for example, to align everything to the left edges. And if you hover over any of these, you'll see what they do, okay? So let's just tap that once and look what happens. They immediately align to the left edge, okay? Now, because these are all the same shape as one another, there's nothing different about them, we want to make them a little different. So I'm going to take this shape, for example, and just add a little something to it. There we go. Now it's a different shape, which means it has a different width from the others. And for this yellow shape here, I'm going to change that up as well. All right, now we have 3 different shapes of different sizes, okay? However, if I select all of them, tap on the blue layer, hold down Shift, come on down to the red, so all 3 are selected, and we go back to our Move tool, Remember that is the key V on your keyboard if you want, or you can just tap over here on the Move tool. We're going to do this again with the left alignment, and tap, and everything is still going to align to that left edge. So even though this shape, okay, is wider than the others, it still aligns perfectly on that left edge. Now, if I were to tap on my ruler and drag out towards these shapes, you will see that it will snap to the edge of them, and it adds a guide. Once I've added a guide, my other guides are once again visible, and you can see how these line up right there on the left edge. Okay, so just to keep things interesting, let's take that yellow shape and let's go ahead and make it even more narrow. So it's not quite the same width as the others, okay? And then we'll just slide it over here. Now, imagine if I have this shape and I want it to snap again, okay? Perfectly aligned to the left with these others. All I have to do is select either one of them since they're already aligned. So I hold down the Shift key and select the blue shape. Got those two layers selected, hit left align, and you'll see now that on the right side it's pushed over a little bit because it has to get that little edge there to line up perfectly with the red and the blue. All right, well, what other options do we have? Okay, let's take all three of our shapes and let's move them around a bit. So we'll take our blue one here, we'll take our yellow one here, and our red one, we'll put it over here. Okay, now let's select all three again and we'll try this right edge align. All right, and as you'd expect, the rightmost edge of this shape is now aligned with the rightmost edge of the yellow shape and the red. So they're now all aligned on that right edge. We'll undo that. Now let's try top align, top edge. Bam, now we have them all aligned right up to the top. See that? Alrighty. Let's try something else. Let's try one of the distribution options, okay? Now this is one of my favorite things because to quickly align things along their edges and to space them out equally is a really cool superpower, and you can do it so fast. So let's say I want everything to be aligned to the left. Okay, I'm going to take this yellow shape, for example, and slide it down this way so it's a lot closer to the red. We'll grab all three, and when I hit left align, okay, there's a bit of space here between the red and the yellow, but there's a greater space here between the blue and the yellow. What I want is for all three of these to have equal spacing, okay, vertically. And all I have to do is tap on one of the distribution options. So here you have, for example, align horizontal centers, align right edges, right? Distribute vertically. Let's tap on that and see what it did. It nudged the yellow shape up. Okay, so I'll undo that again. Distribute vertically. Let's try it. There. Now the space here, if I make a selection in between, you'll see that this space is equal now to that space. See that? 1 and 2. Very nice. So I still have all three selected. Maybe I want them to be aligned, okay, in the center. So I can do this. That's going to align them all in the center. Don't forget, this shape comes all the way out here. So if you were going to make a center line here, you'd see that that actually is the center of those shapes. Pretty nice. All right, now let's do this. We'll take the blue, move it over here. Take the yellow, move it over here. Take the red, move it over here. We'll grab all three, and now what I want to do is distribute them horizontally. So let's come over here. Align vertical centers. Step 1. Now we want them to be spaced, okay, perfectly with one another horizontally. So I come up here, look at the option here. Distribute horizontally. Tap one more time, and now there's an equal amount of space between all three of them along this row. So imagine doing this for like 20 different layers or 40 different layers, and how much faster it would be than trying to manually figure all that out. So that's your alignment across layers, and the option as well to distribute, okay, the total number of pixels of each of those layers in an equidistant fashion. pretty nice. Cryo says, for precise guides on a PC, use View Guides, New Guide, and in position enter either a measurement or a percentage. Yes, that works too. Now you're getting super precise. And just to demonstrate that so everyone can see, if you go to, I'm on a Mac by the way, not a PC, but it's okay. You should be able to do the same thing here. Guides, New Guide, and then you can enter, okay, the position where you want that to be. Now I know that I have a 2000 pixel wide document, and I know that if I go to my horizontal orientation or my vertical orientation, I can be really specific. So for for horizontal, if I say 1200 pixels, and say, okay, and here's a custom color I can even employ. All right, oops, it went down this way. I'm sorry, I meant to go the other way, but there you go. There's that specific guide, and it's a nice green color. The problem with guides is as you zoom in, they stay the same size. So I don't know if you all can see these very clearly. It depends on the resolution you have set when you're watching this live stream. Hopefully you have it high res, 1080p, you know, so that you're really seeing things clearly. You might still be able to get away with it at that resolution, but if you can go a little higher, so much the better. Okay, now, Cryo, you've jumped ahead of me because there's something I want to show everybody, which is the ability to align things with presets. Now, for those of you who have a lot of template work you need to do, this is a really cool thing. I'm going to hide these for a moment, and we're going to clear our guides. So go to View, Guides, Clear Guides. All my guides are gone now. And here's my document, and what I want to do is I want to set up guides for myself, and I want to do this in a quick fashion. And I can go to View, Guides, New Guide Layout. All right, now I can set up a custom color for these. Okay, and I'll just go ahead and do something bright so you can see it really clearly. And now we have options, okay, for the number of columns and number of rows. So maybe I'm designing something with text, and I want to have 3 columns, okay, of text across the page, and I want to have margins and all these other good things. So I can say I want to have 3 columns, okay, and I'm going to just say 2 rows. And you can watch live as the guides are going to get updated. Now for my margins, from the top, I'm just going to say I want 100 pixels. Whoops, I already entered it. Hold on. Clear guides. There we go. View, guides, new guide layout. All right, 100 pixels. 100 pixels on the left, 100 on the bottom, and 100 on the right. There we go. And I'd love to have some spacing in between these, okay? So what I'm going to do is columns, rows, clear the existing guides. All right, here are my columns. There's a gutter I can place in between these columns. And if you know anything about comics, you know that gutters are the spaces in between the panels. So for the gutter, I'm just going to say I want 40 pixels. All right, now see what that did? Now I've got a nice gutter there. So what I can do is with my text box now, if I'm going to lay things out, I can drag from the corner, right? And I could have a little column of text here. And we can just make that be whatever we want. That could be 30 pixels. You can fill it with a bunch of Latin. And we'll use a nicer typeface than that. We'll use Filson. And we'll left align it, copy it, paste, 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 paste. And then I can drag that over here, align it, and align it. And now I've got my 3 columns. And if I hide my guides, you can see how nice that looks across the page, okay? equally spaced because of the gutters. Very easy for me to place that in. And now I've done a lot of the work that if I did not use these presets to try and set something else like this up manually by dragging the guides out one at a time and thinking about how far across the page I was going, it'd be frustrating. Not to mention the fact that currently I'm working with pixels, but if you switch over to inches or centimeters or other units of measurement and you're trying to deal with quarter inches and eighth inches and 16th inches and all these kinds of things, to be able to set this up, okay, with a preset is much, much easier. So we'll hide these for a moment. Now let's say that you want to do something really specific at a weird measurement. For example, let's take our document and we'll go ahead and make it 19 pixels wide. So 2000 was a nice round number, okay? But now we're dealing with 1900. Now for me to do the math to try and do, say, for example, 7, okay, columns would be such a pain. But let's go ahead and do it now by going to View, Guides, New Guide Layout, okay? We'll clear the existing guides. Hold on. Clear the guides and start over. View, Guides, New Guide Layout. Let's come over here and we're going to do 7 columns. Look at that. Just happens immediately. We're going to do just 30 pixels for our gutters, okay? And we'll have absolutely no gutters, all right, on our rows, okay? Let's break that down into, say, 5 rows. And actually, we will go ahead and do the same number of for the gutters horizontally. Now look how great this is. I'm now able, okay, to create a shape and just drag that out using these guides. And I'm using my move tool and holding down the Option key and the Shift key just to move over to the right. I can create myself a little row. I can group these all together, Command G, and then just duplicate that row as I come down. And let's go ahead and group these. I want to show you something else you can do. I'm going to make this a separate measurement for the vertical, okay? And once I've done that, because I have 2 groups, I want you to see what happens when I try and create a third. I'm going to hold down the Option key and watch as I drag. I'm going to keep dragging. Boom. Do you see what happens there? Photoshop tells me, look, Kyle, you have 64 pixels of space between that first and second row. Would you like to have 64 between the second and third? So it anticipates that you may want to have this be an equal amount of spacing. And I say yes. So the next time I then drag out, I can do the same thing. It shows me all 3 and ensures that I have that same amount of spacing as well. So this is another little handy thing. This will work amongst individual layers that you select or groups. All right, let's grab these and delete them. And I'll pause to see if there are any questions. Don't make the gutter too wide to fall into it, says RB. I love a good Photoshop joke. Well done. Alrighty. So, let's look now at grids. Okay, we've looked at guides and sort of understood how they work, but now it's time to look at grids. And if you want to call up your grids, okay, you know that for guides you hit Command semicolon. For grids, hit Command apostrophe, which is directly to the right of the semicolon. And this will pull up my grids. Now you may be wondering how to edit these. It's very simple. Go to Photoshop Preferences. Photoshop Preferences. If you are on a PC on Windows, I believe you have to go to File to get to Preferences, or it might be Edit, okay? On a Mac, it's right under the Photoshop drop down, but on a PC, it might be Edit or File. I think it's Edit, actually. So under Photoshop, we go to Preferences, and then we scroll down to Guides, Grid, and Slices. Now here you can customize all these things. You can see here the guides, the color we have, that's the default, okay? But if we want to go down to Grid right here, this is where things get interesting. You can decide how many lines you want visible for your grid on the screen, knowing that every line that is visible, okay, in the way you're dividing up your space, there's going to be snapping that occurs. So currently I have it set to every 100 pixels, all right? So let's say 200 pixels just to make things a little cleaner, all right? And we also have the option to have subdivisions, which is pretty cool. So I'll say I want 2 subdivisions. And once we do that, we're gonna say okay. All right, now, what I've got, if you can see it, are little dotted lines here for the grids. Now, I can see these, but you may not be able to see these when you're watching. So what I'm going to do is change the color of these and make them darker than I normally would, because I don't like them to be too dark and interfere with what I'm looking at on screen. But we're going to go here and we're going to do that. Okay, so this is much darker than I would normally want my grids to be, but now you can see these subdivisions here, okay? So the solid lines are the grid and the subdivisions are now dotted lines, okay? All right, now, because we have snapping turned on, as before, if I were to draw a shape, okay, notice the snapping is occurring everywhere that the grid is visible, along any of those edges, okay? So for those of you who are interested in experimenting with pixel art, this could be a really simple way for you to do that. To set up a document for yourself and then work on pixel art by simply making selections and doing color fills, okay? And don't forget that if you want to do color fills more quickly, you can use a plugin like my lasso fill, and you can enable that, and then now every time I draw a shape, it just automatically fills with whatever my foreground color is. So that'll save you a step right there, okay? All right, now, this is great because this allows you to, again, subdivide the space on your canvas and draw accurately. And the thing we haven't talked about yet is why you would use this for brushes. Well, in the same way that drawing shapes with any of your selection tools will work with snapping, brushes will do the same. Okay, so let's move on to brushes and take a look at this. So I'm going to just clear this layer. And let's go ahead and grab a really dark color so you should be able to see this clearly when I draw. All right, so here I am on my layer and I've got my grids visible. Now if I start drawing over here, okay, everything's fine. I'll zoom in so you can see this clearly. But watch what happens when I get close to this line. I cannot move away from it. It's snapping, okay? Boom. As I draw along the edge, okay, I get a perfect vertical. I can jump off of it if I move too far away, right? But it gives me, again, about a 10 pixel space in which to work where I can be sloppy if you wish, okay? And I can stick to drawing straight lines on the grid. Pretty nice. So snapping will occur. I got a little sloppy there. There we go. Snapping is going to occur, and I have perfect verticals and perfect horizontals along the edges of that grid. And this works for any brush. So even if you use something crazy, like this knockabout brush, okay? If I want to draw a straight line, I can do that. Let me change the color so you can see this clearly. Just like that. Okay? And like this. All right? Now, what if I do not have a grid, or I don't wish to use a grid, but I do want to sometimes draw straight lines? Okay, a couple things to look at here. Command apostrophe. I've now hidden my grid, which means I can draw a freeform. Okay, we'll go back to the line brush I was using a moment ago. There we go. And now what I want to do is I want to draw a straight line. So let's say I'm drawing a freeform shape, okay? And then I come to this point and I say, now I want to drop down perfectly vertically. If I touch the canvas and hold down the Shift key and start drawing, look what happens. Perfect vertical. All right? And now I want to draw a horizontal over here. Touch the canvas, hold down the Shift key, and draw to the right. Now this is how you can draw verticals and horizontals without using a grid or guides. You can simply hold down the Shift key and draw these lines. Da-da-dum, da-da-dum, like so. Straight lines. But Kyle, I want to draw straight lines at an angle. Yes, I understand. What do you do in that case? All right, now this is where things get a little tricky. You cannot really draw at an angle, okay, and still have control over the width of the line that you're drawing or other qualities that the brush has. And this is a shortcoming of Photoshop. In Fresco, you can use the ruler or you can use snapline to do this, which means in Fresco, for example, if I want to draw a line at this angle, I would draw, pause for a moment, and it would snap, and then I'd be able to like move it anywhere around the screen and get exactly what I want. That is not possible in Photoshop, but what you can do is you can tap, hold down the Shift key, and tap anywhere else on the screen, and you'll get a straight line from point A to point B. But what you'll also get is a line that is uniform in its width. Now, I say this, but because this brush does have some shape dynamics, okay, in play, it will respect the shape dynamics that are not tied to pen pressure, okay? So normally with this brush, if I use light pressure, I get a thinner line, and if I use heavier pressure, I get a thicker line, okay? One of the workarounds for this is if you do have a pen, you can tap somewhere with light pressure, hold down the Shift key, and tap somewhere else, and you're going to get a line that's a little thinner. It's going to be based on the pressure that you use for those 2 times that you tap on the screen. So this is a bit of a workaround. It still, however, does not give the ability to adjust with pressure the diameter of the line over the course of that path. So what people are resorting to doing is using smoothing. So if you look up here, you see smoothing settings for my brush. If I increase that to 100% and then try and draw a line, I'm going to get a much straighter line than I normally would, okay, because it's going to try and help with the wobble factor, okay? It might not be perfectly straight, but it's a lot better than if you try and do it without the smoothing. So this can be a sort of workaround for people. Notice how it catches up there. Point A, point B, and there it goes. I want to teach you all the tricks, guys. I want to teach you the tricks. For smoothing, some people also like to use a different setting. If I tap on the little gear, I have the pulled string mode right here. Okay, so I can use that. This allows me, when I draw, see that giant circle? I have to exit the boundaries of that circle for the line to start moving. Okay? Like so. And this can also make it easier to draw a straight line. So as I move this way, I can go ahead and hit that mark. Like so. So try the pulled string method if you want to get a really straight line and need some assistance, okay? This can help. I can also use light pressure, heavy pressure, and light pressure, and that allows me to move in the direction I still want to go with a fairly straight line, but also have control over the width of that line with pen pressure. So it's nice to be able to do that. If I try and draw a curve, you'll see that that curve is quite perfect, taking advantage of that pulled string mode at 100%, okay? So this can allow you to do some pretty precise sort of drawing using these kinds of tricks, okay? give that a shot. We'll go back to the stroke catch-up mode and have the stroke catch-up at the end. There we go. Kablam. And we'll knock the smoothing back down to a lower value. So take advantage of that. And I showed you how to do the straight lines, okay? There's another thing you can do, however, and this is, if you wish, you can make a selection, okay? So for example, let's take our elliptical marquee tool, and let's go ahead and draw a selection. Now let's say that I want to draw with a brush around this selection. What do? Well, there's a trick to this. If you go to Edit, okay, and Stroke, the options you have are going to create a uniform, say this width 9 pixels, a uniform stroke on the inside, center, or outside of this path. So if I say center and we say go, it simply creates a uniform line around that shape. But what if I want to use a custom brush? So for example, let's find something that's got a bit of a different look to it. I'm looking for it. What I'd like to have is sort of a vine kind of a thing. So what I'll do is go to the Spring 2023 brushes, which just came out. I think I've got a pretty decent sort of vine option there. There we go, the Springy Shoots brush. Sorry, Bloom Up, there we go. Make it a little smaller. All right, now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn this into a path and then stroke that path. So this sounds like a bit of a weird workflow, and it is, but I want you to be aware of it, okay? The first thing I do is I go to my paths right here. It's next to layers. If you don't see paths, go to Window and make sure paths are visible right here, okay? So I'm gonna tap on paths, and there's a little drop-down menu here. I'm gonna say Make Work Path. I always, for the tolerance, put 1 pixel. This means everything's going to be very precise. Let me say, OK. So you'll see what it's done now. It's made a work path for me. And in a moment, I'm going to show you more about paths using the pen tool. But first, I want to stay on this idea of drawing with a brush along a specific path, OK? So here is the work path that's made for me. So now what I can do is, with this work path, OK, I can hold down the Control key and tap on the path itself, and you'll see an option here, Stroke Path. Let's tap on that. And here you can use a specific tool to do this. And I have a brush tool ready to go. Now, we'll talk about this simulate pressure in a moment. So we're going to say OK. And you'll see now what's happened. Go to my layers, and I'll hide the path by tapping off of it for a second. There we go. It's taken that brush and done a perfect circle with that brush drawing around that path. We'll undo that for a moment, come back to our paths, and we're going to, again, hold down Control and say Stroke Path. And this time we're going to say Simulate Pressure. And I want you to see what this does. So these are kind of the limits of what you can do with a brush that does have some responsiveness when it comes to pen pressure when you're drawing with it. It will basically make it so that the beginning and end of your path will be the lightest amount of pressure on the pressure curve, and the exact middle point will be the heaviest amount of pressure. And that is why what I'm seeing here is a very thin line, very thick line, and then back to a thin line. That's how that works. All right, let's see. Oh, Peter, thanks for hanging out. See you later. All right, so if you have any questions about what I just did there, let me know. But that's how you use paths to stroke with a path, okay? And it can be pretty handy. It can come in handy, especially if you have a certain look you're going for with a very specific brush. Pretty nice. But what if you want to use something that isn't a circle or isn't any other kind of shape? Well, you can do the same thing with your lasso tool. So if I, for example, I'll hide this layer and I grab my lasso tool, And let's say I make a very distinct kind of shape like this. And I want this to be the shape that I draw with that same bloom up brush. Well, I do the same thing as before. I go to paths and I simply say make work path. Okay. And now it creates a new path for me. And again, we hold down Control, Stroke, and we say go. Same process. Okay. So there you go. If you want to do some kind of a decorative border or anything else, if you have something that you've imported that's a shape, you can make a lasso tool around it and draw that. But I know what you're thinking. The lasso tool is not as precise as you want it to be all the time. Well, I understand. So what do we do about that? Well, we're going to close today by looking at the pen tool, one of the most precise tools you've ever seen. And this will allow you to get perfect curves and perfect shapes wherever you want. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at it. So to get to your pen tool, just hit the letter P on the keyboard, or you can select it right here, and it looks like a little tip of a fountain pen. Now once you have your pen tool, you're going to be doing some very interesting stuff with it, and that is creating anchors by tapping on the canvas, and then tapping anywhere else, and then holding to create a curve. So if I hold and drag in any direction, I can create a curve. Okay? Now currently it's filling it with a color, but I can simply change this to path and start again, and we're going to now not be worried about that. I can just tap, tap, and I can just see the path, okay, as I draw it. Now these are called handles, okay, and I can change them at any moment to refine my shape by holding down the Command key on a PC, that'd be a Control key, and then tapping on them and moving them around. All right, now the next time I tap on the canvas and hold, I can continue drawing this path. See what I mean? And to get things to look exactly the way I want, I can at any point hold down the Control key, grab a handle, adjust the way the path looks, and get very, very picky with this stuff. Okay? I do the same thing by grabbing what's called an anchor, drag it anywhere I like as well. Okay, make these shorter, make them longer. You can also, when you've drawn a point, if you choose not to have a curved connection to the next point, hold down the Option key and then tap on that anchor, and it will remove the second handle, so that when I next tap, okay, I get a straight line. And I can do this again and again and again. And anytime I want to draw another curve, I can tap and hold, and it's going to create a curve. Okay? Like so. Hold down the Option key, tap, and join things up. Now I have a closed path. And this can be edited at any time, again, by holding down the Command key and dragging, tapping and then dragging any one of these points. You got to tap to select one. So now I'm in editing mode. I can get really specific with all these little shapes. Okay? So this is the most precise kind of drawing you can do in Photoshop. And if you've ever used Adobe Illustrator, then you know how these path tools work, right? Now once I have that path here, if I really think I'm going to use this frequently and I need it and it's exactly what I want, I can double tap on it, and that's going to pull up the option to save a path. I can just call it Shape Kyle. Now there it is. All right, if I tap off of it, it's no longer visible. If I tap back on the shape, there it is. Holding down the Command key on a Mac or Control key on a PC and tapping on that shape makes an active selection of it, just like that. Nice. So then, of course, with my layers, I can go back and I can fill that with color. Now, if I really like that shape, okay, but I want it to be bigger or smaller, the good thing about paths is that they are vector-based shapes, which means they're scalable. Pretty cool. So I may have made this shape and thought it was really cool, but it's very small. And maybe I need to enlarge my document and I need another shape just like it. Okay. Well, what do? I can come to the path, okay, select the path, and I can duplicate that path. There it is. And then I can hit Command T. Now that will allow me to transform that path. Command T, like we did with free transform for anything else. Okay, I can rotate it, do whatever I want. Put that over here. Now we have a larger shape, right? And I can still edit it. So if I have my pen tool, I can, remember, tap and then modify this shape using the Command key. Okay, I can get that to be whatever I want. And then as before, Command and tap on the shape itself means I'm making an active selection of it, make a new layer, grab a different color, and fill. Now if I zoom in, you'll see that is crisp, nice, perfect selection and shape. No pixelation occurred. I was able to make it, modify it, enlarge it, and not worry about that resolution, okay? So paths are vectors. Very, very, very nice. Very, very nice. Okay, now, if you look at the pen tool, okay, you're gonna find that there are other subtools within it that can be very useful. If you long tap, you'll see you have a freeform pen tool. Now, for those of you who like to draw like me, one of the cool things about this is I can just start, whoops, let me grab that, there it is. All right, got my freeform pen tool. I can draw a shape like I would with my lasso tool, and it's going to create an active path for me that I can then modify further, so I can make it really, really clean. Okay, undo that. These are the curvature pen tool, the add anchors. These last three here are for converting the points, which remember are the anchor points, and also your handles. These are those subtools that I was using with keyboard commands, right? I held down the Option key when I wanted to convert a curved anchor that had two handles to one handle, and I also used the Command key to modify any of my anchors or my handles. However, you can also select these specific tools if you want to do that repeatedly and not bother with using the keyboard. And the curvature pen tool is lovely. Watch this. Make a point, make another point, tap and hold, and immediately you just start drawing curves, okay? Pretty nice. See that? So this is great if you're gonna do just curved shapes, okay? Kablamo. And that's precision drawing for you in Photoshop. We learned about straight lines, guides, setting up custom guides, grids, drawing straight lines, okay? Alignment, distribution, drawing with the pen tool, and this covers a lot of bases for you and hopefully will help you with drawing shapes that are exactly the way you want, using measuring, distributing different shapes, aligning layers across one another, and even being able to stroke different shapes that you create thanks to paths with specific brushes. Now there's more to learn about this, as there always is with Photoshop, but I hope this gives you a good starting point to start figuring out how to use these wonderful tools that can really save you a lot of time and energy and help you to draw more precisely. Of course, we also mentioned smoothing, don't want to leave that out, and some tricks you can do there with smoothing. So there you go. Thanks for hanging out with me, gang. Hope that was useful for you. Hope that was educational. More to come in another 2 weeks, as always. In the meantime, I want to say that this particular series, I think has been one of the easiest and best for me to create, because it's really diving into the things that I find to be essential for people who want to draw. And I know that a lot of the stuff I do in the masterclass is more advanced and everything. But this particular class I really like because it's getting people a foundation for working in Photoshop. And I know that Photoshop can be extremely intimidating and overwhelming when you first launch it. But if you watch this series back now, 9 episodes, I really think you're going to learn a lot, and you're going to have what you need to make professional work, whatever it happens to be. Okay? So thanks again. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Remember to be kind. And I'll say ciao for now.